Welcome to Parker Podcast. On today's episode, we'll be discussing digital work on the iPads versus the old method of paper and pencil. Today, I'm your host, Mrs. Brooks, and here with me I have
Jacob Kernick,
Juliana,
Bianca,
Hallie Webster,
Andy Gross.
And we'll also have some special guests coming up here in a little bit. All right, to start out here, guys, we want to talk about some of the pros of paper and pencil, the old ways of doing things. So I'm going to go over to Juliana first. Juliana, what are your thoughts on this subject matter?
Okay, my pros for paper gets you off of electronics, so you don't have that much screen time, so it doesn't hurt your brain. Then with technology, there's tech glitches, and sometimes there's random deleting that you don't want deleted on technology. Then if you have no internet with technology, you can't do your work with school. And then with my opinion, with writing on an iPad and Notability or something, I only like writing with an Apple Pencil, and if I'm not, I don't like writing on iPad just with my finger. And then also with Apple Pencils can die, and then you'll have to recharge them for a long time. But pencils won't die for
It's true, you can always sharpen your pencil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll only take a couple seconds.
Yeah, those are some good points, Juliana. Thank you. And I would agree with that as a parent and as a teacher, that sometimes we just need to get off the screens for a little bit. All right, Jacob, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so I remember better when I am studying on paper, and also on iPads. People are on Minecraft instead of working. Then also we wouldn't have IXLs if we had paper. And also though, I'm better on paper tests. But yeah, so that's about it.
Oh, are you saying you don't enjoy IXLs, Jacob?
I do not.
I thought all the
IXLs.
students here loved IXL. Okay. All right. So those could be some advantages. All right. What about you, Bianca? What do you think about paper and pencil versus iPads?
So I have cons of digital work. Some kids get very distracted on an iPad when a teacher is giving a lesson or giving an assignment. They go on apps like Minecraft and other distracting apps. Another thing is kids use AI for answers. If they are given a question or problem, they use AI to answer it for them. On a related note, kids plagiarize work off of websites. They will go on a website, look up the answer to a question, and they'll copy and paste it right off of the website. They don't really reword anything. They submit the assignment and try to pass it off as their own work. These are cons of using an iPad for digital work.
I would agree with that, Bianca. It's very frustrating as a teacher sometimes when students now have that temptation of cheating and plagiarizing and using the AI. So those are some very good points as well, for sure. All right, now we're going to flip over kind of to the other side of things, and we're going to hear from two sixth graders who have some positives to the iPads versus the paper.
So I have a bunch of cons to using paper and pencil. One of them is kids can lose the papers that the teachers give them, and it's really annoying for teachers to have to get print all of those again and always have to have extra papers. It's just really not organized and stressful. Also, kids with terrible handwriting, teachers can't even read what they're writing on paper, and so it's kind of pointless to have paper and pencil if you can't even read what they're trying to put down on the paper. Also, if you need to write a lot, your hand gets really tired, and even if you have good handwriting, it's really hard to keep your handwriting consistent throughout a really long paper.
Like those TDAs that they make you write, right, Andy?
Yeah. Also, on the environment side, it's terrible for the environment if you're printing out a bunch of papers for kids. just use PDFs. Also, like, it kind of depends on the subject area. Like, personally, if it's any subject other than math, I prefer writing on iPad because usually you have to write more. But, like, in math, I like the feeling of pencil and paper in my hand. I don't know.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, Andy. And I think as a teacher too, I feel the same way. I think some assignments are better on paper. I think when we're brainstorming for writing, I like kids to have a pencil and a paper in their hand. But then when we move on to the final draft maybe of something, I like them to type for that handwriting issue that you talked about. So I agree that there's certain times for both.
So along with what Andy said, I think organization is a big thing because a lot of kids lose their papers. Also with the handwriting, a lot of kids have terrible handwriting and it's hard to read. Also, along with Andy said, the cost of paper and ink is a lot, but when you have an iPad, it just costs for the iPad and for the electric bill. I also think that when you get sick unexpectedly, it's really helpful when you have all your notes or supplies in Notability already, or if you have it in your folder, then it's really easy for your teachers to just have it in Schoology, and you can just do it when you're out sick.
And that's one of my favorite things about the iPads as a teacher is that if you're missing school, whether it be for a trip or an illness, you still have the ability to hop on there and kind of keep pace with your classroom. So that's really nice for sure. All right, thanks, guys. So we have some thoughts on both sides, some situations where we believe the iPad is really great for learning, and we also have situations where the paper and pencil, old way of doing things, is great for learning as well. And we have some special guests that we'd like to welcome to our podcast today. First, we have Mrs. Helsley, 6th grade teacher. Thank you, Mrs. Helsley, for coming and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to get some teacher input on the matter now. So some of our students here, our 6th graders, have questions for Mrs. Helsley. Bianca, do you want to start?
Yeah. So which method do you prefer and why?
I prefer a balance, and I would like to say that I was listening to everyone on here, and you all have some amazing points. It's so nice to hear different points of view from the students and what your take is on this. And I was agreeing and just maybe disagreeing a little bit with some of the things, but I would say the screen time is excessive. I know that you are all on your phones so much, and me too. I'm on my phone a lot as well, and so it is hard to also be on an iPad at work and on a computer. There are a lot of distractions. I feel as though most of the time with a warning, students will come back to me if they become a little bit distracted. So I don't have a huge problem with that in the classroom. The charging issue is a real issue. That we have habitual students who forget to charge their iPads at night, and that is one more responsibility that you all have, and maybe a reason why it's nice to do work with the paper a little bit more. Your fine motor skills, that's why I think that you're always doing the handshaking after we ask you to write for long periods of time, and everyone knows, I think, what we're talking about here with the shaking of the hand. Oh my goodness, this is so, and so that I think has really hurt the ability to be able to read your writing and for teachers to read your writing, because you are using those thumbs all the time and using your fingers on a keypad rather than using those little fine motor skills that you have in your hands. It's like anything else. If you don't work those muscles out, you don't use them, and so they become weaker. And so there's lots of disadvantages to the iPad. Paper is an expense, so it is nice to save money on paper. We don't have as much paper floating around in the classrooms. It makes it kind of neater. And I agree with the lost documents as well. I would just say also, someone had said something about the writing. And as a language arts teacher, I find students are much more careful in their writing when they are writing with their hands and not on immediately doing drafting on their iPads. I think you just take a little bit more time. You don't depend so much on the technology to fix the issues and to edit the content. You kind of use your brain a little bit more. And so maybe having the compromise in starting with rough drafts in the beginning with the finalized typed copy, which is kind of how we do it in in my classroom. I think that's getting kind of the best of both worlds there. Paying a little more attention, but then at the end being able to type it out. I also like the feel of a book in my hand, and I know we do a lot of reading online. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but I like having paper in my hand and reading from an actual book. Anybody else feel that way?
I think kids now, even in the library, sometimes if we don't have a copy of a certain book because someone has it checked out, I'll offer them the ebook if we have it. And sometimes they're like, you know what, Mrs. Brooks, I'll just wait for the paper copy to come back in. I don't really like reading on my iPad. And I feel the same way. I like to have a physical book in my hand if I'm reading.
Me too.
What do you guys think over there?
I like a book.
No, it's easier to take notes and like highlight.
So you like reading on the iPad, okay?
That is an advantage, Hallie.
All right, Hallie, do you want to ask another question for Mrs. Helsley?
Yeah. From a teacher standpoint, what do students typically do better on?
I feel when it comes to reading, better on the iPad. Maybe you're used to reading on the iPad. When it comes to writing, better on paper.
Mm-hmm. Could see that.
How many technology violations do you deal with daily due to students having iPads?
Well, if you've had me for class, you know I tend to not use the QR, and I tend to more or less warn and give a little mindful warning. I don't see a ton. I would say charging is an issue, and if students are distracted, bringing their attention back up to me could potentially be probably the two biggest issues that I find.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Helsley. We appreciate having some teacher feedback on this. It's good for our listeners to hear from you as well.
I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you so much inviting me.
Thanks. Maybe we'll have you back again in the future. All right, next up, we have another special guest today on our podcast. We have Mr. Buto with us in the podcasting studio. We thought it was also important to get an administrator's feedback on the paper versus pencil versus digital learning. So welcome, Mr. Buto.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. This is my podcasting debut. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've never been on one, so thank you guys for this opportunity.
Well, we're happy to have you. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. All right, Juliana, I think you have a question for him first.
Which method do you prefer and why?
That's a good question. The simple answer to that is yes. I prefer both methods. I think both methods are extremely helpful, both personally and then as a principal, as I look at students and what students are going to need for their future. I think it's important that they're able to be effective in both. There are times when I prefer to work electronically, and there are times when I prefer to use paper pencil. And I think it's important for students as they go into their future that they have the skills to function both electronically and on paper.
And so, have you seen a difference in test scores since students have gone to one-on-one devices?
That's a great question. So this was something so our middle school, I don't know if you realize this, if the listeners realize it, but we were actually the first middle school in the area to transition to iPads. We actually were one-to-one with iPads long before some of the high schools in our area were one-to-one. So we're kind of pioneers in that. So we kind of led the charge. We've got a lot of teachers here that really embraced the technology and worked hard to learn that technology very quickly and help students use it effectively. So we started using our iPads. It was probably, I think it was close to 15 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago that we started with iPads here. And so once we had them for a few years, the option became available for us to switch from paper pencil to testing on the state testing online. And we were really nervous about it. We weren't sure we wanted to do it. We actually passed up the opportunity to test online the first couple years. And once we saw how well our students and teachers were using the technology, we decided to give it a shot. So our first year of testing online, we looked very closely at test scores, and we're very glad to see that there was actually no difference in student achievement based on the paper pencil as well as compared to the online testing. So we do not see an impact from from testing online, or it hasn't impacted our scores at all.
As a follow-up to that, Mr. Buto, what do you think about kids' performance in the classroom since the iPads have come along? Do you think that you've seen an improvement in that because of the things the iPads are able to do?
I think it's certainly unlocked some really exciting learning activities for students, things that wouldn't have been accessible to them in the past. Certainly, information is so much easier for students to get. Now that presents new challenges too, because they have to know how to curate that information and how to treat that information. So I think if you look at a test score wise, I think we have maintained a pretty consistent trajectory with regard to test scores. But as far as learning opportunities, has certainly opened up new learning opportunities for students.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a lot of cool things we can do on there, but at the same time, we have to regulate that and make sure that the kids are still learning and using their brain, like we talked a little bit about earlier.
Will there ever be a time where we will switch back to paper only?
That's a great question. I would say possibly. I really don't think so, but I think the only scenario where I think we would switch back to paper pencil only is if devices, the internet, AI take over at such a deep level that they actually almost completely prevent authentic learning. I think right now when you look at a classroom and you look at the distraction that an iPad provides to students, certainly we see learning loss here because students are distracted by it, or they rely on it. Now you have the sort of a new challenge for teachers and for students as AI becomes a way that kids cheat. So now if you see kids relying on AI instead of doing some critical, authentic learning themselves, if that becomes so prevalent and so strong that kids really aren't learning anymore, I think we would have to shut that out. We'd have to, kind of unplug and do that learning. But what I think will really happen is that we will learn how to mitigate the challenges of technology and do the learning that students need without technology. We'll find ways to get that done. And I do think we'll find better ways to sort of control the technology and let it fit in its proper place, and we'll be able to innovate to a point where students will learn at a even greater pace in light of where technology's at.
Thank you. That's a very good insight to that question.
Our last question for you is, has there been an increase in student discipline, like misbehavior, since the iPads were introduced?
That's a great question. No, we have not seen an increase. We have not seen a decrease. That has really maintained steady. Instead of kids forgetting to charge iPads, back in the day, kids wouldn't bring pencils to class. Or they'd forget their notebook, or they'd leave a textbook at home. So, as far as those kinds of things, we still have challenges with kids bringing materials to class. It's just different materials. As far as the, kids misbehaving, I think if anything, my hypothesis would be that because you have the iPad and there are so many distractions on the iPad, we'd actually see less misbehavior. But that hasn't occurred either. So we're seeing the same amount of student behaviors consistently through this digital transition.
That makes sense. I could see that because whether they're off task on their iPad or off of their iPad, we still have those same behaviors that are able to occur with or without those iPads. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Buto, for taking the time to be with us today.
thank you very much. This was a great privilege, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you to everyone that was involved with this Parker podcast, and we'll see you next time.
And if you are interested in this podcast and want to give your own opinion, you can take our survey
on Spotify. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.
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 Bye.